The Leprechaun franchise simply won't stay dead. Just when it seemed I was done having to suffer these painfully unfunny comedies, the powers that be decided to grace us with a reboot. A film that's not only terrible, but completely departs from anything you crazy Lepheads liked about the last 6 centuries. So join us as we discuss a film that will please absolutely no one. Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter. In fact, top of the morning to you, you might say. Welcome, this is a horror movie show. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Tim.
What kind of person says top of the morning at the start of a podcast?
Someone who's referencing the fact that we're doing a film that's based in Irish mythology and is set in Ireland, has Irish characters in it.
I'm just giving you a shit because you did that to me. I think, was it last episode I did that?
It was, yeah, but that was Final Destination, Tim. It was more out of place.
Oh, same thing, same difference.
Oh yeah, because Final Destination is steeped in Irish history. Not to claim that this film is in any way actually shaped by Irish history or heritage beyond the broadest of strokes. But of course, probably about 2 years ago now, we started working through the Leprechaun franchise. We did the 1993 original film starring one Jennifer Aniston. We followed the Lep to, I think was it Hollywood, the tours in the back of the hearse.
That's right.
Right. And then we followed the Lep to Vegas and Leprechaun 3, and then Leprechaun 4 went all the way to outer space. And then somehow there was 2 Leprechaun movies that went to the hood.
Of course. Normal horror trajectory is, Vegas, space, hood again.
Call me crazy. I would think the hood would happen before the space part, but what do I know?
See, that's why you're not in LA.
So that's 6 Leprechaun movies, but there is a 7th. There's actually an 8th as well. We'll get to that someday soon. But we're here today to talk about the 7th Leprechaun film. But this does not star Warwick Davis. Leprechaun in the Hood 2, or Back to the Hood, whatever the title of that stupid movie was the finale of the original Warwick Davis series of films. And we are now into the 2014 WWE produced reboot called Leprechaun Origins. Which, was this like this is like Lionsgate? Did this all something to do with Sci-Fi Channel, or is it the one after this is to do with the Sci-Fi Channel?
I know the one after this was definitely Sci-Fi Channel original, but I mean, I'm sure this one was on Sci-Fi Channel as well.
Probably at some point, but it's Lionsgate who do
Leprechaun, notorious sci-fi icon.
Well, the 4th one, arguably.
Yeah. Well, next one you should probably do on the Ace, by the way. Just.
Oh. Yeah. Well, we're not. We're going to finish it, but.
Alright, sorry Tara, I tried.
What do you mean sorry I tried? You should probably say apologies, I tried to throw you under the bus. But yeah, so this is Lionsgate and WWE films, and the only thing I knew about this film, other than that it had nothing to do with the previous films, is that Hornswoggle, who is a little person who is a wrestler in WWE, starred as Leprechaun, and he dresses like a leprechaun when he's wrestling. He's got a little green hat, he runs around, it's a whole thing. So, colour me shocked when I found out that, while he is technically starring as the Leprechaun in this, the Leprechaun is in full prosthetic makeup, and you don't ever actually really see him, which I thought was the point. I thought the point was that he runs around like a leprechaun anyway, as his wrestling character. So the point of this, I thought, was to throw him in the movie and have him kill people. Turns out,
you would think so.
Look, I thought that was the whole point. But here we are. We'll start spoiler free if you happen to care, which you probably don't. But we will start spoiler free. We'll give you some general impressions, and then we'll give you a warning before we move on to the. I don't want to actually make it sound like this film has minutiae to talk about, but but plot details, what little there may be of them, we'll discuss. Now, I have to confess something, Tim.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Is this one of Pete's classic confessional corner?
Well, I really wanted to come in here knowing that you didn't like this film, right? Knowing that you hate this film, I kind of wanted to come in here and fake praise it for the entire thing, right? Basically, the thing you've done with every other Leprechaun movie, I wanted to try and do with this one. Right? But I can't fake it like you can, Tim. I can't do it. I have too much integrity. I can't lie to the audience and pretend this is a good movie. It's garbage. It's shit. So
yeah, I was a little worried, and I was actually going to tell you beforehand. I was like, so help me, you contrarian son of a bitch, if you even try to act like, you know what, this one actually is pretty good, like, I will walk out of here so fast. But I mean, I'm glad that yeah, you can't even pretend, and I can't blame you. I mean, not that I've pretended on any other movies, but even I would not, if that was the thing that I did, I would not be able to do that with this movie either.
Yeah, it does. Finally, the Leprechaun name has something to be proud of. This film comes in and gives it the gravitas. I mean, this one's set in Ireland. I mean, if I'm going to give it a positive point, it's set in Ireland, which none of the other Leprechaun films were. You would think that
takes away the whole purpose, because it's a fish out of water story. It's not supposed to take place in Ireland.
Well, I get the first one's that, but you think after 5 sequels, one of them they might have said, "Oh, we're going to go back to his homeland," and do a story
his
where
home planet.
I said homeland, not home planet. Come on.
No, but I mean, once he's in space, eventually he should go back to his home planet.
True. The planet Ireland. So I guess the thing to say about the premise of this is that this is nothing like the previous films in that the Leprechaun does not talk. There is no character to the Leprechaun. In fact, I would describe this as a like not a werewolf, but like just like a monster movie.
Yeah. I would go as far as to say that this movie, it is a movie called Leprechaun Origins, which has neither a leprechaun nor any origins.
Yes. It's basically their attempt to try and do, you know how, like, not to the same extent as this, but in many ways, like Nosferatu is like, okay, we're going to take the sexy stuff away from Dracula and make it more like monstrous, right? This is what it's kind of trying to do for Leprechaun, but they go so far and it's just this, like, this could be any monster. It doesn't matter. You get like crappy like Predator Vision style shots of like the POV.
The lip vision. Oh, it's so bad.
And there's so much in the movie which is like, you can't see it. You just see people start screaming as if it's grabbing its the legs, and it's like, ah! And it's like, this is just goofy monster movie shit with full of tropes. And it also kind of plays into, as much as I said, give it faint praise for actually being set in Ireland, I also, at the same time, acknowledging that, I also want to say, all those movies that are usually supernatural, but they're usually a little bit racist because they go to, say, India or they go to South America, and it'll be the local culture. Yeah. This is basically that. It happens to be Ireland that the American tourists, because the main characters are not Irish, right? The side characters are Irish. The main characters are American tourists. Notably, one of which I recognized from multiple films.
One of them, I mean, the not like the main dude, but the other dude.
Yes, the taxi driver from Alone in the Dark, and the Freddy obsessed one from Freddy vs. Jason is in this movie. Okay,
yeah. I didn't bother to look him up on IMDb because I just couldn't. Be bothered after watching this movie, but I did remember him. So yeah, definitely Freddy versus Jason. I remember, but Alone in the Dark, I would have never have remembered that in like a million years.
Well, it's not been that long since we've done it, and we had a whole conversation about how that was the guy that was in Freddy vs. Jason. So as soon as I saw him, I went. Although it did confuse me a little bit as to what the age of the characters were supposed to be. They kind of talk about going off to university, but like. This dude's like 30 at least now at this point in time, maybe even older. So I wasn't really sure what they were doing there, but that's the whole thing.
The only characteristics I got of any of the characters is like the one dude is just the worst boyfriend ever. Like,
he's just a horrible boyfriend. It's basically kind of like a predecessor to Midsummer, where he clearly is done with this relationship, and the girl's trying to like be romantic and try and do little moments with him, and he just keeps sandbagging her. Although she's also kind of a terrible main character in some ways, which we can't get into until spoilers, but let's just say some of her decisions do not lead to success.
Sure, yeah.
And then the other two are just kind of like the side couple comic relief. They're always horny, drinking, and whatever, and that's basically it. But I mean, so it's full of tropes. It's just a crappy monster movie. With a crappy looking monster, with, quite frankly, lots and lots of really boring stretches where it's just plain unlikable characters trapped in a cabin or in a farmhouse or whatever.
Yeah, I want to say that it's like generic, but I don't know, that almost feels like insulting to the word generic. You know? Yeah, it's just like there's nothing about this that stands out at all, which in a way I guess I was timidly excited to kind of watch it again, just because I'd only seen it the one time. I remember hating it. I didn't think it was going to be good at all, but I thought, all right, maybe I'll watch it again. Maybe there'll be something that's like so bad it'll be good to kind of rip on or make fun of or whatever. But there really isn't anything. It's just, it is so bland. Nothing about it stands out. It's not even like, okay, there's like cool kills or like, oh, there's like this insane story beat that they introduce that's like so crazy. It's like, no, it's like the same kind of generic crap that like you know, for just really bad generic mid-2000s horror movies. It's just nothing good about it. And you know,
I want to point out here, this movie came out in 2014. You just said mid-2000s, but and you're kind of, and the funny thing is you're kind of right. I agree. It feels like a generic mid-2000s movie, but it's not mid-2000s. It's mid-2010s.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, it still has like that feel of like the earlier 2000s, like kind of like, you know, shitty, you know, unnecessary reboot that doesn't add anything new or have any interesting developments.
I mean, it is direct to video, I believe, but it does look direct to video. It looks cheap and just unpleasant. It's a frustrating experience because you know within like a minute exactly what the whole movie's going to be like. You can just feel feel it. So the first couple of seconds of that, the opening couple running from the monster. You're like, oh, this is going to be bad. I'm not going to like any of this. This is going to have no... There's one funny death. I'll say that. There's one funny death that made me laugh. It's the one positive thing I can give the whole movie.
Okay. Might know what you're talking about, but we'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah, and, you know, I mean, we've had... we've had some good times talking about the Leprechaun movies on this show. And, you know, I mean... whatever your opinion about them, at least, you know, I think they're somewhat memorable. Like, they can stick out in your mind. Like, you even named them off before. Like, all right, yeah, you have the one where he goes to Hollywood, the one where he goes to outer space, the one where he goes to Vegas or the Hood. Like, at least, you know, those are different enough and they stand out. Like, this is just...
You're using my own words against me to make a positive point about those awful movies. I hate this.
I was saying some people think they're bad, but I think at least the people that think they're bad can admit that, like, okay, well, at least they're doing something that's kind of so crazy that you have to that at least sticks in your mind. Whereas this, you know, again, like you said, this is just like the same generic bland, you know, horror movie tropes that you've seen a million times. As soon as you watch it, you know exactly the type of movie you're in for.
But what's wild to me is that all these tropes we're talking about were not tropes that were in the Leprechaun movies. This is not doing the Leprechaun tropes. This is doing just other movie tropes.
Yeah, and again, like, I get it's so strange because I mean, I guess it's a reboot, but I don't know, like, why are you calling it Origins? Because it makes it sound like, you know, that it's connected to the other movies somehow and that this is going to be like the birth of the Leprechaun, but it bears no resemblance to the Lep that we've, you know, come to know and love, you know, throughout these whole movies in any way, shape, or form.
No, yes, love, I question. But yeah, I mean, like, there is a vague origin referenced in the film of how the Leprechaun came to like start terrorizing people, right? There's a brief backstory that's mentioned
for this Leprechaun.
Yes. But it's weird though, because
I refuse to believe that this is in any way the origin story of the one true leprechaun. But hashtag my leprechaun.
But but you know, like, but it's the amount of backstory you'd expect in like just any standalone movie for its villains. So in this case, if you just called it Leprechaun, well, it wouldn't be the Leprechaun of ye old days, if you will. This backstory would just function as the backstory for this version, this monster. But calling it Leprechaun Origins to me implies that they thought this was going to be such a hit that they were going to start churning out, you know, kind of like how Batman Begins. Like, that could sound like a prequel, but it's not. And let's face it, they were pretty confident we're going to get more of these, and it'll be a trilogy of sorts. But the arrogance of of this movie to think that it's going to have a sequel. They thought they were going to have, the Lep Knight returns and. You realise that if we ever wanted to make some sort of rip-off movie, like, I'm pretty sure legally we could call it The Lep and no one could sue us. Like, it'd be fine.
I mean, that's another thing, too. Like, why bother, like, getting the Leprechaun license when you literally could have just made your own Leprechaun movie? Because there's like a Leprechaun movie on Tubi I've had on, like, my queue to watch, like, for months now.
Of course you have.
Yeah, I think it's called, like, the Leprechauns game or something, but it has nothing to do with, the leprechaun from my childhood, but it's a leprechaun. I'm sorry, but leprechauns are in public domain. You can make a leprechaun movie if you want, which actually is give me a good idea.
Just to clarifying one point you made there, why would you go to the trouble of getting the Leprechaun license? Well, they didn't, because Lionsgate already owned the Leprechaun license.
Okay.
So this is just what they decide to do next. Like, basically, someone. Okay. I don't know if they asked someone to come up with a pitch because they wanted to reboot it, or if someone said, "Hey, I've got this great idea for a Leprechaun movie," and it's their fault. I don't know where the idea came from to do this.
Well, I mean, someone probably wrote a script called like Tiny Irish Werewolves, and someone was like, "Can you just change them to leprechauns?" And then
to be fair, he's still after gold, technically. Sure. That one plot detail is still intact.
That's fair, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, there's nothing really much good to say about the characters. Like, we've basically already described all the characteristics that we could think of for them. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the thing, is that you'd expect that, okay, so couple go on this thing, and since it's not Midsummer, we're not, bubbling up to that epic conclusion that movie has. Because this is supposed to be a normal horror movie, you expect, okay, he's feeling weird that she wants to come live with him rather than go to her own university, and he's being standoffish, and he's kind of like sandbagging her romantic little moments. But you'd expect, and what I thought they were going to do, because this is the painfully obvious thing to do to make it work, and to make us care about the characters perhaps when something bad might happen to one of them later, is that he has maybe a bit of a redemption where he confesses why he's been acting weird, or he goes out of his way to save her or something. Up until a moment, like, spoilers, up until he dies, right up until the moment he dies, he is like, right before that moment, he does something else shitty. The movie just keeps making us not like him, to the point where when he dies, like, did you just want us to not care when he died?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's strange because you don't like him, but it's not in the way that, sometimes like a cheesier horror movie, or like, if you're watching like a really good like slasher movie from the 80s, and they'll have the obnoxiously over the top bad boyfriend where they're like, they suck, but it's like so over the top that it's funny and enjoyable to watch. At least do something like that. But this here, it's almost like a more realistic, like, annoying stupid person, where you're just like, oh, instead of being fun to watch, it's just kind of awkward to watch, like, these, this person that definitely doesn't want to be with this person and is selfish and dumb. And yeah, so I don't know, it's not like annoying enough to be entertaining, but like you said, it doesn't make you care for him at all. And then,
or even root for his death. Even, it's not like you're like, oh, this is fun, I want to see him die. Like, it's not like that at all.
Yeah,
nothing about these characters is fun. Let me make that very clear, right?
Yeah, and then the with the woman, I would imagine that, like, her arc would then be, all right, she has to get over this, her crappy boyfriend, and then kind of rise to the occasion to become a badass. But she really doesn't do that either. Like, I guess she kind of has her moment right at the very end, but
Well,
And it's like, who cares?
her whole thing at the start is that when she says she's thinking of not going to whatever university it was to study history, her best friend, the other girl's like, wait, really? And clearly she's like saying, wait, you're giving this up to go be with this asshole, and you should, you've been dreaming of like studying this since you were, a young child. Like, you should not give it your dream. She's clearly concerned about her friend, right?
It's always like that bad movie way of like trying to give someone characteristic by just having other characters be like, but you've loved this thing your whole life. Like, this is who you are. Like, you're the history girl, man. Like, that's so stupid.
Yeah, very stupid. But like, it's like, okay, so she's sort of giving up her own thing. So you think, okay, so the arc for her is that she's going to, stick up for what she wants by the end of the film, and she's going to take control. She's going to, and she does technically try and take control, in that she's the one that comes up with a plan at one point. But we'll talk about the disastrous results of that a little bit later. So yeah, there's not a lot to like. In fact, there's hardly anything. Basically nothing. There's basically nothing to like about the movie. Like, I've definitely seen worse overall there's definitely worse movies, but this is pretty much in that really bad, really boring, very little to redeem it in a good bad way or a bad good way or in any way.
Yeah. I think especially the kills are like really bad. And again, you compare it to other Leprechaun movies where the Leprechaun actually has a personality and he has powers, and he can kind of make these like weird crazy kills where he can use magic and make things appear and stuff. So at least that stuff is interesting. Here, like, literally every kill is like the Leprechaun just scratching you. He either like scratches you or like pulls out a part of your body or something. But I mean,
one of them is a bit over the top. I wouldn't say I enjoyed it that much though. Yeah, but it's, I don't know. And it's annoying as well that, like, I do not like these Leprechaun movies. I think they're pretty bad. But but it's funny to me that this. You
mean the WWE Leprechaun movies?
No, I mean the Warwick Davis starring Leprechaun movies.
Huh, okay. Thought we were on the same page for most of them,
but it is funny to me that this film, like, even though I think they're pretty trashy and I don't really like them, this film does clearly spit in the face of anyone who likes those movies, because it is so far removed and is trying to be something completely different. Like you say, it's just this crappy generic monster movie that could, like, the main thing you hear from this monster is growling. You hear growling from the Leprechaun as it's chasing people.
But I mean, who wants this? Like, who wants like a Leprechaun movie where like the Leprechaun doesn't talk, or like it's just like this weird creature you barely see, and like, and I do remember like when it was coming out, like I wasn't really watching wrestling at this time. I don't know who Mr. Hornswoggle or whatever. I'm not aware of him. No offense, I'm sure he's a lovely man. But like I do remember hearing that big thing, like, oh, like, this guy, he's stepping into the iconic Warwick Davis role, and so it's like, all right, I mean, I guess there must be something about him. Like, let's see what he's gonna do. And like, I don't even think you needed him in the movie. Like, half the time I couldn't even tell that there was like someone dressed up as a leprechaun or whatever, because most of the shots when you do see him, like, they're very quick, and you're just seeing like usually like a little part of the body, or it's like something like where he's like hidden in the grass or in like a dark shadow or like whatever. So it's like, yeah, you didn't even really need an actor playing this part.
And it's not even just, I mean, obviously, yeah, there's the wild complaint of like, why make a stunt casting out of it and getting someone who's known for dressing like a leprechaun when you're going to just turn them into what effectively I'd say looks like a goblin more than anything else. There's no clothes, he's not got a hat on or it, and he's just a goblin who's like running around and killing people. He does care about gold, but that's about it. That's the extent. And so yeah, all right, do we go spoilers then? Is it spoiler time?
Oh yeah,
I know I already spoiled something, but no one cares. So full spoilers for Leprechaun Origins. I guess
we paid an old Irishman to drive us up to spoiler country.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing, is that the only reason why this is technically part of this franchise is because it is Lionsgate, who made it and said it was part of this lineage. They said this was a reboot of Leprechaun. Because like you said, this could easily just be someone else made this and called it Leprechaun Origins, and that would be fine, because there's other Leprechaun movies called Leprechaun : something that aren't anything to do with the Lionsgate franchise.
Yeah.
So
Leprechaun, Time to Die.
This is basically only here on a technicality as part of this franchise, as being one of the entries we have to talk about. Mm-hmm. But it got you. Yeah. I mean, they got you to watch it. You know,
I hate to say it, but you're right.
So, here we are. So there's a quick scene at the start, like an American couple getting chased down by the leprechaun. Because always American. Apparently, the Americans are the ones dumb enough to get lured into this trap. But we cut to our main,
and basically, and like they're in like this tall grass, and it's basically like that scene from like the Lost World Jurassic Park where the raptors are just like picking people off. Like,
I want to say,
which is like a very strange thing to like rip off for a Leprechaun movie.
Yeah, like I said, you get the crappy like lep vision, right? You get like you get that sort of fast motion running like through the grass, and you get like sort of it's not infrared. It's got a different color scheme, but it's very infrared-y in terms of style.
Which it's like, I'm assuming that it had like a very yellowish, like I'm guessing because they like gold, so
yes.
That's like their vision.
Yes, they see in gold and green. That's what their vision looks like. But yeah, I want to say there's even a shot, just to compare it to that long grass scene. I think there's even a couple of shots at one point where you can sort of see like, as if he's running really fast in the grass, but you can't see him. You just see like, sort of the shape in the grass, the line of where he's running. Kind of like whenever if you've ever watched Smallville and like Clark would run through the crops, you'd get like a
Clark. We miss you, Clark.
Don't miss that, Clark. Smallville's trash, although it may be better than Leprechaun Origins. Shockingly enough.
Yeah. How many episodes of Smallville did you watch? Did you watch every episode?
I kind of like skimmed the later ones, but I essentially I think I watched the first like 6 or 7 seasons properly, and then I sort of skimmed the rest of it and technically got to the end to see how it finished.
Okay.
It got really bad. You know, it was never good, but it got really bad after the halfway point.
I remember like some of the later episodes, it was like, oh my god, like they brought Jeff Johns in to write an episode and it's gonna have like the JSA in it. Oh my god.
Simpler times. Mm-hmm. Yes. So we get introduced to our main foursome, our two couples who are, and again, this is exactly the moment. It's in the Lost World, funny enough, with the boat, but you see it in lots of movies with cars as well, where the person they've hired to drive them to a location only goes so far as I'm not going any further. You have to walk the rest of the way, right? It does that. So they walk into this village, and I'm like, wait, why is he scared to come in here if there's a whole village living in this area?
That's very strange. Yeah.
And
because like it makes it seem like he's bringing him to this barrier he doesn't want to cross, but then later the other tour guide also brings him to a barrier that they don't want to cross. So it's like, yeah, what is going on here? It's very strange.
Yeah, obviously it turns out that we get a bit of it's a little bit of a hot fuzz. The whole village is in on what's happening. So basically what we learned throughout the film, just to explain this before we go through what all the characters go through, is that at some point in a cave nearby they found a mine and they found a lot of gold, but it turns out this gold they took was this leprechaun's gold. So now they have to make amends by offering up people. Apparently they were getting killed at first, but then they started offering up tourists a cabin, and they'd leave a little gold, because the guy leaves like a gold Rolex watch as like a signal to say, hey, come get them, Lep, come get them. So that's the whole idea. And these tourists are really stupid. Like the fact that none of them even noticed that the front door was locked from the outside at the little cabin until the middle of the night was weird to me. Like, how did you not hear them lock that? How?
Great question.
It's insanity to me. Unless they didn't do it right away and they came back, like, oh, we'll come back in a few hours and lock it when they're not in the main area. So they don't hear it. I don't know.
Like, how did the town figure out that like they needed to sacrifice people? Like, it's not like they could like talk to the leprechaun.
Yeah, this is not a talking leprechaun. Did they find like some book that explained the mythology of leprechauns to them? I guess. Yeah.
Well, I mean, literally the main character like finds a book later on.
Would you believe it? She finds a book in a basement in a cabin in the woods about leprechauns.
And like you're explaining earlier that like we do kind of get like an origin of sorts about the leprechauns or whatever, but even that is like delivered in the most generic way where yeah, someone just like finds a book that just conveniently has everything written, and it also really does that like dumb horror movie thing where it's not just like, oh hey, here's leprechauns, like they have to call it someone else. It's like, oh yeah, this ancient demon like doo-da ba ba da da, like which means leprechaun, like oh snap. it's a demon. It's stupid.
Yeah, I'm assuming it's supposed to be Irish Gaelic, that the language is that they're saying.
Maybe.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is the thing, like, so they go to this small village, they go to the little pub, and they're talking about what they're doing, and this older Irishman turns around and is like, I'm sorry, I couldn't help overhear you, lads and lassies. Would you like to talk? I can't do an Irish accent, so apologies to all involved. But he turns around and he basically says, hey, he makes some small talk, and he's like, Joe's an area near here that's like, this really secluded place. And I'm like, first of all, how many horror movies start with a character saying, hey, this is not on the tourist guides, but there's a cool hidden thing that we can show? Like, so much of it, and I'm like, okay. And they take a vote, and the only guy who doesn't want to go is the shitty boyfriend. And she even points out, the main girl even points out, how many like medical things have I sat through, because that's what you do. And he's like, fine, I'll go.
And the problem here is that like we have no idea like what their trip is, so it's kind of hard to be like, when they're like, oh hey, like we're supposed to have like an overnight trip here.
It was maybe a day trip, and then it turned, and then the guy's mad that it's now an overnight because they have to go and stay in this cabin for a night.
Yeah, but it's like we have no idea of like what their trip is, like what the places they're planning to go, and the things like they're looking to do and study. Like all we know is that this like girl likes history stuff, and then the guy is basically saying like, oh, there's like some vague history stuff near here. But it's like, I don't know, it's so stupid.
Obviously, you presume that this is a longer trip where Ireland, or at least this part of Ireland, is only one stop on the trip because, they're American. But I do like to think that it is just a day trip. They all just had a day trip to Ireland from, from I don't know, Boston or somewhere. Like, hey, yeah, here we are.
I mean, maybe people are not as like, like anal as me or whatever. But like, if I'm planning like a big trip, especially if it's, somewhere that I don't go very often, like another country or something, like, you plan down like, to the minute of like the places you want to go and the things you want to hit and what you're going to do. And like, you'll get tickets for like this place here and, this train or this, show or whatever. So like, yeah, to just be very casually be like, well, I mean, sure. Yeah. Let's do this thing that we, did not plan for or whatever. Like, I don't know. That feels a little strange to me. Not that, people wouldn't do it, but since we're not getting like any details into their life or their trip or like whatever, I don't know, so it feels very convenient and very stupid.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the obvious assumption to make would be that it's just a trip to Ireland and it's just going out to this village to see these historical things. That's the day trip of it, and the rest of it's supposed to be just back in, Dublin or whatever city they might have been actually visiting.
We're supposed to go visit we're supposed to be at the big Irish medical conference in 5 hours.
A lot of doctors in Ireland. It probably is. Probably about as many per capita as other countries, I assume.
Yeah. Well, if all the leprechaun attacks they get, I'm sure.
Sure, yeah. That's why they've got such a robust healthcare system, is they have to be prepped for all the leprechaun attacks.
Exactly.
And
it's also though, like, I have no idea like what these other two, at least like with the main couple, it's like, all right, that classic mismatched pair. She likes history, he likes medicine. I have no idea what the other two, like you said, 30-year-old couple or whatever, what they're doing or what they're into.
The only thing you get is that the other girl is a friend to the main girl because she does seem concerned that she's the choices that she's making about this boyfriend, right? You get that she cares about her, and that's it. Like, everything else is completely whatever. What's so funny to me though is later on, right before the boyfriend dies towards the end of the film, one of the last things he does is that when they're running away from the leprechaun, she falls down and he doesn't go back to like help her up. He just keeps running to the truck, and then she comes in and she's like, "Why didn't you come back and like help me?" And he just kind of like, you know, fobs it off by saying, "Oh, I was trying to get to the truck so we could get out of here." And it's like, obviously it's a really shitty thing to do. What's really stupid about that to me is that earlier in the film, after they first get attacked and they run from the cabin, the other guy, you know, the Freddy vs. Jason actor, when they're running from the cabin at that point, and he's got an injured leg, he like falls over, and his girlfriend doesn't go back for him either. It's actually the main girl who goes back to help him up to show us that she's a good character. So it's really weird to pull this same card twice in the one movie in different ways. It's like, because you're using it later on to show that he's a shitty boyfriend, he doesn't care about her anymore. But earlier on, you were using it to show that, well, they're all kind of shitty except her. So I don't know. All very strange, but yeah. So they get taken out. The Irish guy calls his son, who seems like really unfriendly at first, but it's all set up for a swerve. The reason why he's really in a bad mood is because he feels guilty that he's taking these people out there to be killed. Like, he doesn't, you know, he's the one who's sympathetic, and ultimately he's going to like side with the
leprechaun,
the victims. I was trying to say, well, because I was going to say heroes, because in most movies you would describe your protagonist as the heroes, but I didn't feel right to use that word right. In this context.
Yeah.
Nothing heroic about these shitheads.
No.
So they go out of the cabin. They stay there middle of the night, because there's a moment before they go in where like one of the girls hears something, and the farmer gets his shotgun out, and he says that there's wild boar occasionally. Nothing to worry about if you're inside. And middle of the night, the other girl wakes up. She sees something outside going through the grass, and she screams and gets everyone up. And they're like, it's just an animal, you know, it's the forest, there's nothing to worry about. Because it's not like it's not like, you know, that's the thing, because of the height of like the movement, it's not like it was like an adult creeping on them or anything like that. So it's one of those things where usually in a horror movie, when like one character sees something and they get freaked out and no one else believes them, we're usually with the character who saw something, because it makes sense they should be scared because they did see it and we saw it with them. The problem here is that I actually think it's perfectly plausible that she is overreacting because she saw a little bit of movement in the forest that was, you know, waist high. So I don't know.
Like you'd probably think it was like a fox or
anything.
Anything.
Literally could have been anything. You don't get a good look at what, I mean, if she actually saw a goblin looking leprechaun, then fair enough, but she didn't. She saw like a quick blur move, you know, from left to right. That's all she saw. So it's actually not that long till it attacks them. You know, a lot of this middle stuff kind of starts to blur together, but it's a series of, they're just running and screaming. They get out through a hole in the wall out the cabin. They run to the local like sort of little farmhouse, which, you know, has
it's basically just running from like one location to like the same location. It's just like a little bigger.
And it happens a few times, and obviously the other element of the movie is that when the Irish guy and his friend and his son realize that they have escaped the cabin, they're also like out looking for them to kidnap them, to take them back and offer them up for the Lep's dinner, I guess. Because he says he feeds on them, but we also like, he doesn't actually eat anyone that he kills. Maybe he just saves them for later.
Right. Yeah. He seems to like to take, if you have gold on you, he likes to take that.
But yeah, I thought that was an okay idea. Like the idea that he comes up, he runs up and like, you know, rips the earring out of like her ear. It's like, it's pretty nasty, and it's like, okay, he wants gold. That's gold. Makes sense. Whatever. Yeah.
But it's like it's so strange though, because like, what if they give him a sacrifice that has no gold on him? Like, is he gonna be pissed? Like, you know, does he care?
That's a very good question. Maybe that's what they were foreshadowing at the start, because you know the Freddy vs. Jason guy like makes a joke about the guy having a Rolex. He's like, you're not meant to be rich, you know, this mine fell through, but you've got a gold Rolex on, and he's like, don't worry, there's plenty else I can steal from you. And it's like it's one of these moments just played off like, oh, was that a threat? And then it's like he starts to say, I got you good, didn't I? And they all start laughing. But
why would you even make like a creepy joke like that if you're like, I really need to get these people to this cabin to sacrifice Well, why do you even risk making a dumb thing like that? I don't know.
Because the director and writer saw it in another movie. They saw the untrustworthy person make the joke like that, and then alleviate tension, and whatever.
And again, we don't know like anything about like, do I have to sacrifice people for the rest of their lives, or like is this just payback until like the amount of gold that they took from him is paid back or whatever? And then
that is a very good question, Tim. I don't think the movie answered that.
Also, it's like, all right, so these people like don't want to leave the village, but also like, I don't know, even if you have like a bunch of gold, like, does that really matter if like you're living in like some crappy small village? Like what good is having a bunch of gold if you're just living in this like place you can't leave because of leprechauns?
Well, that's the thing. I actually thought that is the son at one point says, why don't we just leave? Or why the other character says it, and he's like, oh, you don't just give up your home. This is our home. You first sign of trouble, you don't give it up. And I'm like, there's like 20 people living in this village. I'm sure you could just all leave. You could just all literally move, and it wouldn't be that big a deal. Yep. But for some reason, they're determined to stay here, which I guess is meant to make him more villainous, this Irish guy, that he's willing to offer people. And that's the other question. How often are you offering people up here? Like, do you have to start to worry if you don't get a new batch of tourists often enough? And presumably, I mean, it's Ireland. People are not going to be traveling on vacation to Ireland in the winter, because it's not exactly a climate that's got a nice winter, Like, I mean, maybe some people would if they want to be there with family over Christmas or something, but those people aren't going to go exploring where a small village is with, the ruins and the things to see and all that, right?
Very good.
So presumably you only get like a couple of batches every summer, and is that enough? I guess.
No idea.
I guess it is. I mean, the Irish guy does say that his son gets moody in the summer. Maybe that's why he gets moody in the summer, because he is upset that
could be
that's killing season. That's sacrifice season.
It's also funny, like it's so casual, like, oh yeah, he, like the way his dad's acting, like, like, oh, why are you so moody? It's like, because you're making me kill people. Like, that's a very justifiable reason to like be upset.
To most people, I mean, crazy old Irish farmers or whatever he is, not so much.
Yeah.
So the movie just kind of goes on repeat here. There's a lot of like them running around. The old people do find them. The old guy finds them at one point, and he's like, okay, we're going to take you elsewhere. But then the friend, I guess the leprechaun got tired of waiting, so he kills like the Irish guy's friend. And you don't see the death. You just see him kind of like his body lying there with like a spike through it or whatever it is that he's impaled on. But then from there, they do start dying a little bit. The friend goes first. The guy, Freddie V's Jason, actor, he goes first. Unsurprisingly, not much to it, to be honest. It's not a fun death to watch, I would say.
He's like slashed across the stomach.
That's basically it. And then the other girl, though, the blonde woman, like, was she blonde? I think she was blonde. That doesn't really matter. Yeah. She was blonder than the main girl. The main girl was definitely had darker hair. I don't know if you describe her as blonde, though. But her death's actually pretty funny, because the only part of the movie I enjoyed in any way, shape, or form is main girl's like, no, we're going to go back to the cabin, and her boyfriend and the girl are like, but why? He's like, we're going to kill it. And it's like, oh, okay, all right, you're getting, you're taking charge. Good for you, I suppose. And she's like, hey, bestie, you're going to be the bait. All you have to do is lure it into the cabin where we're both going to be waiting with weapons, and we're going to kill it, right? And some wires get crossed here, because as she's running from the leprechaun outside the cabin, she decides to dart into the hole where her friends are waiting to kill her. Like, the leprechaun pulls like a little, I don't know, evasive maneuver or something. And because they're waiting, ready to strike, her death is that she goes flying into this hole at in the bottom of the wall where they're waiting to kill the leprechaun, and without thinking about it, they just bring an axe down into her face and kill her dead right there and then. And it is hilarious. It is like such a stupid accidental death that obviously the main girl starts like weeping and like, wailing and crying about it. Although I did think that once they got out the cabin, like a minute later, she immediately starts like barking orders again to like, which is what we should do next. And I'm like, oh, you're over that then now. Okay. you just murdered your best friend because you're an idiot. and now you're like over it and, you know, running to the truck, which is where the boyfriend doesn't go back for her, and then she's pissed out about it. She's still not quite got it. She's still not quite got it. This guy's an asshole and doesn't want me anymore. So characters aren't that bright. They try and tell her she's a good person with a couple of little things, like her going back for the other guy, which is fine. You should do things like that. But everything else in the movie paints the characters either as unlikable, as stupid, or as a blank slate. That's your that's your three types.
Yeah.
So that's all you got. Because before this happens, actually, there's a bit in the middle before the first guy gets killed. They get to like the old woman from the pub is driving around, and they're like, "Hey, please help us!" And they get in, and I'm sitting there going, "Guys, what if she's working with them? What if she's in on it?" It's like the most obvious, predictable thing. And would you believe it? She drives them straight to the Irish guy who's behind all this, and then they knock them out and tie them up. Although there is a weird detail here where they get out of the car and he's got them at gunpoint, and he says, you know, I'd like to shoot you for being such a pain in the arse, but like I kind of need to sacrifice all four of you. And I'm like, did you just admit that you won't shoot them no matter what because you need them all alive? And I'm like,
that's a good point.
That's a pretty like important detail that they can now abuse, like, because like if you can't shoot them, then you're pointing the gun at them has no. And one of them does, like, you know, I think the boyfriend tries to fight back a little bit. But there's a moment where the son like points his gun again at him, and he goes like, okay, and he gets like scared again, and I'm like, why are you scared? He just admitted that they can't shoot you. For this to work, they have to let the leprechaun get you, which I guess means the girl's best friend doesn't count because Leprechaun didn't kill her.
That's true. That's a good point.
She got an axe to the head. She got an accidental axe to the head. I'm trying to fit this into the segment you wanted of me saying all you have to do, but I can't think of it, to be honest, Tim. The movie's just completely broken. There's nothing I can offer to suggest to fix it.
I already forgot that was a segment we do now.
Well, you wanted to be on the last episode. You said, "Is that a new segment now?" And I was trying to like shoehorn it in to give you a chuckle, but I'm so happy that you don't even remember it. It's fine.
I say a lot of things in these episodes. I can't be arsed to remember them all.
And of course, the most important part of the mythology is that if you run past a certain rock in a field, the leprechaun can't follow you past it. Did you like that plot detail?
Oh yeah, fantastic.
And I'm like, why?
Which makes it like a very easy movie to be like, oh yeah, we just gotta get past these stones. Well,
yeah, Joe was so stupid about it is that I'm pretty sure they already read the book and knew this before the main girl said, let's go back to the cabin and lure it in and kill it.
Oh yeah.
Like, why didn't you just leave? Just go.
Yeah. And like, it doesn't feel like, I mean, at least from what we're getting with the movie, it doesn't feel like this is a very vast, huge amount of space. Like, I bet you could run, past it.
Well, they walk from where that stone is, because that's where the driver at the start wouldn't drive past. So they walk from where that stone is to the little village, and I don't know, I mean, obviously it cuts ahead, but it doesn't feel like they've been on like a long hike. It feels like they've been 10 minutes maybe.
Yeah, and it's just everything in the movie just feels very close, like like we're only getting like a few locations and they all kind of feel similar. And yeah, it is very repetitive because it's like, all right, we're in the cabin now, we gotta go back to like this farmhouse or whatever, now we're gonna go back to the cabin, like now we're in a truck that like they've been in trucks and stuff before, and I don't know, everything feels like it's all kind of in the same place.
Yeah, there's not a lot of variety to it. You can tell
very boring.
That this largely probably got greenlit because it was a very cheap movie to make, because it was very,
for sure, yeah.
It was very light in locations. It's very light in effects. Even you've got the leprechaun goblin thing, but that is it. Like, that is the only thing you've got, and then some kills to deal with. The boyfriend does have a bit of an over-the-top death where the leprechaun kind of pulls out his spine from the back. It's honestly not as visceral as it sounds, though. Like, because we've seen
it doesn't look good.
We've seen the Predator do it, and that looked pretty cool in Predator when he does it, But here it just kind of feels, I don't know.
It just looks like someone pulling like some like loose like fake looking bones out of.
If anything, because of like the blood and meat sort of sticking to it, it looked kind of like a rack of ribs or something. He was just pulling out of his back. Dosed in like barbecue sauce or something like that.
Also, it's all taking place at night and it's very dark and it doesn't look good at all.
Yeah, it doesn't look good during the day either, though, because it has that cheap, direct-to-video quality to it. Some of the village might have even, I don't know if it was actually, some of it was green screened in behind them because they didn't have like an actual full village, or if it was just a case of like, the color coding and like them making it look desaturated just made it look a bit off, so it looked kind of green screened. But there was definitely a couple of shots at that part where I thought, not really feeling this. So is that basically it?
I mean, the only other thing is then so eventually the son turns on the dad, and because they basically have like the girl cornered again. They're gonna sacrifice her, and then
for the son is fourth time in the movie they've got her cornered again. Yes.
That's the other thing. Like everything about this is so repetitive. Like the locations are repetitive, and then like. Yeah, they get picked up by these people like 2-3 times, and again, like you said, there's no tension or anything because they're not actually gonna kill them. Like they have to wait to. That's
count actually. So there's the tricking of them at the start, which is them getting picked up effectively. There's when they find them in the basement again after they've left the cabin, and then there's when the old woman tricks them and takes them back to him, and then there's this part again. This is the fourth. This is literally the fourth time they've had her kind of in their grasp of some kind.
Yeah, and I guess maybe the movie wants you to think it's a surprise when the son kind of turns on the dad and is like, no, like we can't do this anymore. Like I'm gonna let her escape, but it's like so obvious, from the beginning that that's what they're gonna do.
I don't think it's meant to be a surprise. I think the movie wants you to root for him to make the right choice. I think the movie's trying to make it clear from early on, like, no, you want to root for him as the good guy. He's secretly a good guy, and you want to root for him to make that. Just do the thing. Be the hero. Do the moment.
But it's just, I don't know, there's just nothing to this moment because it's just like so obvious that that's what they're going for. But I don't know. So he lets her escape, and then essentially it ends with the the woman finding some type of sword or large knife or something, and having a really dumb one-liner and chopping the leprechaun's head off.
Yeah, but then it's clearly still chasing her when she's running for the rock.
Yeah,
and she gets past this like stone, and then it's like, oh, the movie's over.
It's also really stupid. Like she throws these gold coins in the air, and the leprechaun looks up, and then he cuts off its head. But I don't know, it's such a dumb thing. It's like, all right, so what are you gonna use those coins for? It's like, oh, you're literally just throwing them up in the air, just to distract them for a second.
Yeah, it's the Batman Forever how you get Two-Face trick. You just throw all the coins up at the same time.
Don't make me think about that movie.
It's boiling acid. Or I suppose in this case it'd be, I can't do an Irish accent. I was going to try and do a boiling acid in an Irish accent, but I can't do it.
I hate the fact with the new Batman movie that some people are like coming out and being like, Batman, well, that was Batman Forever is like, it's actually pretty good. Like people don't give enough credit. Like no, I rewatched all the Batman movies leading up to the new one, and that one is very, very, very bad.
Yes, nah, Batman Forever's not good. Yeah. But what I was going to I was going to say the leprechaun looks bad, but one of the things you said there though about the throwing up the coins, I think that's kind of fits into this segment. All you have to do, Tim, right? So here's kind of that is that mechanically, because when it comes to monster movies, and this shouldn't really be a monster movie, but if that's what it's going to be, the mechanics of he's attracted to gold, so you can use that to lure him to places or into a trap or so on and so forth. Like, you could do something with that. Use that. If the characters learn that, use it.
Yeah.
And ultimately, all she does with it is throw coins up so he looks up and gets distracted for a second. But use that to lure him into a place where you trap him, or use it to, or maybe like throw gold at the villain guy, so the Leprechaun will go after him, kind of thing. There's lots of little options you could do. And I wouldn't say this would make the movie work, which is why it's not a true, this is all you have to do. There's a lot you have to do, but at least that would be something. Like, you'd have characters figuring something out and forming a plan based on the mechanics that have been presented to them.
Which is like, and again, like, I feel like you kind of got to give some credit to the other movies because they actually did utilize stuff like that. Like, in the other ones, he had weaknesses like, 4-leaf clovers. So there'd be stuff where they would have to, find one to use it against them, or like, I think they only really used in the first movie, but like, he like compulsively has to like clean shoes, so they'll throw shoes at him to, get away while he cleans those, or like, in the second one, he was weak against iron, so like, they put him in like.
Can we acknowledge here the problem with what you're saying? Well, I agree in theory. The problem is that his weakness changed every movie. They had a new weakness for him every movie and forgot about the old ones. So.
That's true, yeah.
So that's a legitimate concern as well, but yes, fair point.
The 4-leaf clovers, I think, stuck around for at least some of the movies, because I believe they tried to get him to smoke some in one of the Hood movies.
Okay.
But yeah, hey, it's a series that likes to build upon itself until this one that just likes to destroy. But
sure.
But yeah, I mean, whatever. I think at least that stuff is a little more interesting and clever than just like throwing gold coins up and then having the very tacky line, "F you, Lucky Charms," I believe she says.
Yes, that was the line.
Which, like, they wanted people to be like, yeah, when she said it, but it's such a dud.
Oh yeah, it's not good. Yeah. It's not good. She has the acting prowess of Monica Keena in Freddy vs. Jason, just to bring that up again. Actually, that's not probably fair. So this actress is probably a better actress than she is, if I'm honest. Like, obviously her character's shit here, and like I honestly think she's great or even good. But Monica Keena is especially bad in Freddy vs. Jason. That's a more fun movie, obviously, but
yeah, I guess. Yeah.
I'm just picking on poor Monica Keena because she's really bad in that.
Yeah.
So,
but we love her though. She's great.
I agree. None of this. What are you talking about?
A friend of the show.
Not a friend of that. The Nemesis of the show. It's not my arch rival's Paul W.S. Anderson. This has been heavily
sure.
Well, here's my arch rival on the Ace, because I've had to do a couple of his movies recently. When we eventually have to do all the Resident Evils on here, then the hatred will really come flowing. So yes, that's the thing. But here we are. So I guess it's time we rate it time. I don't think there's anything else to talk about in this movie. Like, somehow we've scraped this to just about an hour. By the time we're done outroing it, it'll be over an hour. We've given them a full episode. We can feel good about ourselves.
Okay.
So, would you want to rate Leprechaun Origins?
I mean, I have to go to the absolute. Well, I guess it's not absolute, but the bottom of the barrel. I'm giving this a 1. It's a. I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but I am quite fond of the Leprechaun franchise, and
yeah, I don't know if that's come up before, Tim.
This movie just takes like a big green turd on one of the most successful horror franchises of the 90s and early 2000s. And yeah, it's a real shame. It just manages to take everything that, like the Leprechaun franchise is, most of the people that watch it, I don't think they're appreciate it as fine art, but it's because it's usually like over the top and silly and kind of ridiculous and cheesy. But there's a level of funness to that, which this takes everything out of that. So I don't understand what the point in making this or watching this is. It is so devoid of any type of fun or charm. It looks bad. The characters are not memorable whatsoever. Like, the kills are not good. The leprechaun itself, it doesn't even look like a leprechaun. And I couldn't even really tell you what it looks like because you barely ever get to see it. It is always so quick and dark, and it does not look like your cat, unfortunately. But I would like that more. But I mean, I struggle to find anything redeeming about this movie whatsoever. The kills are bad, the characters are bad. There's nothing that's outrageous or over the top that makes it funny. It's very repetitive. It's very boring. It looks, uninteresting. It sounds uninteresting. Like, again, I was making a joke, but like, you would call this movie generic or something. But again, it's like, I don't know. I feel like I still get more from like generic movies or whatever. Like this, I get absolutely nothing. It's just like such a blank void of a movie. And even though I'd seen it before, like I could barely like remember anything about it. And even after just watching it like a few hours earlier today, I still could like barely remember anything. It's so like dull and forgetting. And yeah, it's just absolutely awful. I don't know who in their right minds thought it was a good idea to do any of this movie thing. I wish it could be like burned off the face of this earth and just like never exist, because it is such a blight on humanity.
One of the most successful horror franchises of the 1990s. You thought by rambling for another 5 minutes that I would forget that you started with that. I did not. Tim, I really thought that fatherhood might like finally like mature your brain and make things click in the right place or something. But alas, it was not the case. If anything, your brain's deteriorating at an even quicker rate.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, I'm not going to go as low as a 1. I don't think it's a 1 out of 10. I'm thinking like a 2.5 out of 10, which is not exactly high praise. Let me make that clear. Is a really bad movie that is full of generic tropes. It has one moment that makes me laugh, but it's just kind of thoroughly uninteresting and unlikable to watch almost the entire time. So, yeah, there's like very little here to say, at least you'll get a kick out of this moment or whatever. Like I say, one girl's death I thought was kind of funny because it was meant to be this dramatic mistake that was like a heartbreaking, like, oh no, this is the worst part of the, in terms of like the drama, this is the worst, like, lowest point of the characters go through is this accidental killing of their friend, and I thought that was kind of funny. But everything else is just, like, you can't even be passionate in your hatred for it, because it's not like I care that it's shitting over the Leprechaun franchise. You can take a big turtle over that all you want. I don't care, but it is. Well,
you should care because I care about it.
Objectively, it is. Yes, Tim, I'm heartbroken for you that this was such a personal slight on your experience as a human being that so yes. So
if they made an XCOM movie and it sucked balls, I'd reach out to you and be like, hey man, sorry to hear this movie wasn't good.
I mean, I don't hold high hopes for any video game adaptations, but sure. Well, there you go. That is Leprechaun Origins. Hopefully you enjoyed the 7th Leprechaun review from us. There is one more left. There is a requel to get to that's coming soon. So I don't know when that'll be. We'll probably do at least one of the Hellraiser sequels before we get to that. Maybe a few other sequels before we get to that. But the opportunity to get a sequel out was here, and we thought there's only 2 Leprechaun movies left. That's not one of them out. So here you are. The penultimate, and unfortunately, as Tim said, for now, Leprechaun movie. So
we should probably fast track those Hellraisers because they're supposedly supposed to be a new one.
That's a good point. Yeah. Well, I think we'll largely focus on those, although we're also obviously focusing on Failed Destination because we know there's one of them coming as well. But Puppet Master, Wreck, and Critters can wait a little bit whilst we're get sure all these ones are done and out of the way. But there you go. So let us know what you thought of the movie if you've seen it. If you're unfortunate enough, you poor souls, in the comments. Like, subscribe, ding the bell, all those things help. But of course, you can help us out over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, just like our Patreon producers Tyler Hess, Cindy Palacios, David Sharp, Board Now, Christopher Moy, David Brown, Al Tradesman, and Alison M. Fordyce. All of them support us over there with the higher tiers, but you can support us for as little as $1 per month, and that $1 gets you access to monthly bonus episodes of Screams After Midnight, and even more Screams, which is another monthly show, which is just us talking about whatever random horror movies we've been watching and talking about them casually, spoiler free. It's kind of like a catch up show. So yeah, go and see if you're interested in supporting the content and getting some bonuses.
You always list out the names of the patrons at the end of the show, but if anyone wants me to list their name, if you send me a message and Venmo me $1, I'll say your name at the end of the show too, if anyone is interested in that.
Well, and I read
the
producers, Tim, which is a higher. It's not all the patrons. That's just.
All right. Well, the one I'm doing is for anyone who wants to send me $1, and for $2, I'll say a special message if you have like a special special message you want me to say, as long as it's not like racist or sexist or anything.
Tim, you realize that if people take you up on that, the end of the show is going to balloon in size because people will just get you to say stupid shit, and we'll be sitting here for like an extra half an hour, and you sitting going, well, so and so I wanted me to say this.
Well, I mean, hey, if I'm getting paid, that's fine. I don't mind going a little longer as long as I'm getting that green.
Tim is bluffing. This is not happening. Don't get excited.
Well, send me money. We'll see if it happens.
I don't mind letting you read the producer list, Tim, if you want. If you want to get a shot of reading the producer list, I'm more than happy to give you the list.
No, because that's... I'm not making money off that. I need... Yeah, it's not the time to bring this up, but yeah, I might not be doing so well. I mean, I could use the money.
Hey, I've seen your comic book hauls every week, Tim. Maybe start there.
Well, that's why I'm not doing so well.
He gets back from the comic shop on like a Wednesday and he's got here's 5 trades I bought and 10 comics. The poor baby's college fund is a negative numbers before he's even had a chance.
It's bad. It's bad.
Oh dear. All right. Anyway, so go check out Patreon. Of course, I'm going to make Tim pose for the thumbnail. So here we go. 3, 2, 1, pose. Yeah, back a bit, Tim. You took it off. You took it off at the top and bottom. Back up. Back. Aye. Yeah, I can use something towards the end of that. You give me a few choices. I appreciate that.
It's all about choices. We're pro-choice here.
Absolutely. I'm waiting to pivot into a very serious topic right now, but yes, we're pro-choice on this podcast. Oh dear. Thank you very much for joining us, everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed the show. This has been Screams After Midnight. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time with Final Destination 2, so look forward to that. But of course, you can catch even more Screams, I think. It's already up on Patreon for this month by the time this goes out, so hopefully you enjoyed that too. So goodbye everyone, keep watching scary movies. We're out.